All right, and we're live. Welcome back to the Loopcast. Today, joined as always by Josh and Erica, my co-hosts, and it's someone's birthday. I think I don't know if we want to start the show with that. Josh, happy birthday! You're a year wiser.
Happy birthday,
How you
Josh.
feeling?
I mean, some people say I don't look a day over 47, but I literally am a day over
Yeah.
47. Sorry.
So they'd be a good guesser. I texted you for your birthday on your birthday plans. I don't know if you want to reveal if it's too personal, but what'd you do for your birthday?
Dude, not personal. So, I mean, how you celebrate with great feast? I smoked a ton of ribs, and my lovely wife, made me some dessert that wasn't too sugary. Got to try the lower carb stuff. So, peanut butter pie.
Oh,
Good.
yum. I love all things peanut butter. It's great.
So,
So, I mean, and then like people are like, what about your gifts? And I mean, for what gifts for 47?
well,
I
Josh, you
think
did
there's
get a
good.
gift.
I
You
did get one gift.
you got a
I
gift
have.
from the Senate.
Happy birthday.
Oh yes,
Good
this is
segue.
wrapped in a bow. Let me
Yeah,
tell you
so let's
what.
just get right to it. The Senate, both Republicans and Democrats really wanted to give Josh a nice birthday present. On
I
Sunday
know.
evening, they decided to reveal what was in the border bill, the
Oh
much
boy.
awaited, a lot of shrouded mystery border bill, and some people were upset. Let's put it that way. And we're here to talk about it. We saw it at the same time as everyone else. We saw it Sunday night, texting around about it, and so we've had last night and this morning to look over the contents of the bill. And so I think we want to kind of go over. I was basically telling people because people were so upset about it. I wanted to actually get a good faith argument from the other side, from Senator Langford, who Josh is a noted not fan of,
Not a
and some
fan.
other people associated with this bill. What could possibly be the reasons why this might be a good thing? And so I went and collected some of those, and I want to share them here. But first, I mean, just general reactions from you guys. What were your first reactions when seeing the contents of the bill?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of confirmed we'd actually already known some of what was in the bill, and we'd covered it in a couple of internal emails and everything. So we knew about this like 5,000 number, about the 5,000 allowed over the border every day, and that goes to 1.825 million. So a lot of the language in the bill ended up confirming just how bad we knew it was going to be. Not to like that's a happy thing, like, oh look, we were right. I'd rather be wrong about something like this. But yeah, that was my first reaction, was like, well, yep, it is what it is. So nothing nothing earth shattering there.
Josh?
Well, and again, it's like 5,000 a day over the course of a week, 35,000. Then it
Mhm.
would be an emergency for which the president could declare the border to be an emergency. Now, wait a minute. That's what it would take to become an emergency.
So I
Right.
believe that's
And
actually technically inaccurate, Josh. Just so I could clarify, there would be an automatic mechanism built into the bill if it reaches an average of 5,000
right,
5,000 illegal asylum seekers um, on average for a week, and then it would
right.
automatically trigger this. However, the issue is that in the bill it says President Biden, if he feels the need to, he can reverse that emergency at any point in time.
Exactly.
So
Loopholes all
they're saying
over.
it's an
Yes, but
automatic
again, it's
mechanism,
it's
but
setting a standard that this is what we consider an emergency to be, right?
right,
35,000 over the course of a week. When it
5,000.
5,000 a day, 35,000 over a week, right? Do the
An
math.
average of 5,000 a day. Yeah.
Right, over 7 days, 35,000. I don't know why this is
Math
hard.
math
Tom, do
folks.
you wanna go do you need a
Math
calculator, Tom?
101.
Get out your iPhone. So the point though is that 5,000 a day is what's now the new emergency. It's the new normal for them, right? When if you look back at the Obama administration, which wasn't that long ago, the Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson said 1,000 a day was a crisis. And so now we're just accepting the fact that 5 times worse for 7 days in a row. Now that's a problem.
Yeah.
Now that's a crisis. So this is what I'm getting at. Like the people in Washington is horrible. And of course, as soon as this language came out, it confirmed, like Erica said, everything that we've been warning about over the last 3 weeks. And the supporters of this bill, like Langford, Mitch McConnell, and all the Democrats, are like, no, that's not in the bill. What are you talking about? And then it's all in the bill.
It's in the bill. You can see it now.
Great. And
It's there.
the Chamber of Commerce took about 17 seconds to endorse it because they love cheap labor, so they're all in favor of this bill. the economics of illegal immigration crush the working poor and the middle class. They don't care if you're the Chamber of Commerce. They want cheap labor, and Democrats love cheap votes. So it's a lose-lose for the American people, and it's a win-win for the folks in the Beltway.
Yeah, the line that really jumped out from one of the apologists for the bill, my own Connecticut Senator, Chris Murphy, he comes out with a long Twitter thread explaining how this bill is going to be so great. It's really robust. I think Biden called it the most robust immigration reform in decades. I'm like, what decade? Where have you been? But Senator Murphy, he goes, a requirement for the president to funnel asylum claims to the land ports of entry, blah, 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 when more than 5,000 people cross a day. And then he goes, the border never closes, but claims must be processed, ... And of course, that the border never closes line sort of really sums up what the bill is. And to me, I'm like, if you can have this emergency shutdown at 5,000, why not an emergency shutdown at 3,000? Or for Josh's number under Obama, 1,000. Why this 5,000 number? And to me, it's so frustrating that they continue to say things like, well, we need this bill because President Biden doesn't have the capability to do anything until he gets a special bill from Congress that allows him to actually address the border crisis. And it's so frustrating because he already has that. I mean, he spent the first 3 weeks in office reversing every Trump administration border security measure that he could get his hands on. And with the same flip of the pen, he could do the same thing in reverse. He doesn't need this. And it's certainly, the American people certainly don't need this.
Yeah, if I may, because we're getting into the border section of the bill, which of course was the most talked about. I mean, we're not
Right.
even talking about the money breakdown here first. So Nighthawk, I have a good in that Google document. I have a good money breakdown of where all the money's going.
Follow
If you
the
want to throw
money.
that up. So we're talking about this is they like to keep saying bipartisan agreement. So both parties have decided they want to spend $118 billion of taxpayer funding in this bill. Okay, so 60 billion of this is going to support Ukraine. And by support, I have some more breakdowns of exactly what support means, but I mean that 60 billion just jumps off the page as
Did you notice that Senator Mike Lee from Utah noted that would be more spending that we do on for Ukraine in this bill than we spend on our own United States Marine Corps.
Right.
for
It's a bigger budget
1
than the
year. I
Marines.
believe we spend about 58 billion on the Marines per year. This would be more than we spend on the Marines.
Insane.
Crazy. So we'd be sending 14 billion for security assistance in Israel as well, which is already, I mean, this isn't monopoly money. This is a lot of money. So this all comes before we even talk about spending on our own country, which should just already be thrown out as treasonous. Dare I say treasonous, but go ahead, Mercer.
I like how we get security assistance in Israel, but we can't get security assistance in our own country on our southern border. So, and again, it gets to the Mitch McConnell doesn't care about the border. Mitch McConnell wants this bill so he can get the money for Ukraine and Israel. That's what he cares about. And he would be happy to get rid of the whole immigration stuff and just have a bill to give a ton of money to the Ukraine and Israel. That's his focus. And it makes you wonder, why is he leading the Senate Republicans anymore? And in fact, it was nice to see Senator Mike Lee say it's time for new leadership in the Senate. And he means Senate Republicans. He thinks this bill is horrible. And that's why. And we're actually starting to see, when it comes to Senate leadership, we're starting to see some of the icebergs move. So here's what's going on. We have one member of the Senate leadership on the Republican side, Senator Daines out of Montana, came out against the bill. So that's a good sign. And also John Cornyn, who's super liberal Republican and pro-amnesty guy. Just because he's pro-life doesn't mean I give him a pass on this other stuff. John Cornyn, I don't like at all. But he even said this bill raises serious concerns with the immigration provisions in it. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. Wow. Even John Cornyn's not super happy with this. So it tells me that this bill is in serious trouble. And in fact, there's staffers from Senator Langford's office. He's the Oklahoma Republican who's pushing this bill, this terrible immigration thing. People in Langford's office are desperate. They're desperate to get people to sign off and issue public statements in favor of this bill, but they're not getting anybody to do it. And all these other Republican senators are like, if I support this bill, which is going nowhere, by the way, in the House, the Republican-led House is not going to touch this with a 10-foot pole. So Senate Republicans are like, why would I touch this? Why would I do this?
Mike Johnson said it's dead on arrival.
Mhm.
So he's
the
already
Speaker of
come
the
out.
House.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think we don't even really get into all the minutia as I mean we talk about immediate work permits for illegal aliens already in the country right now, taxpayer funded lawyers for illegals, 1.3 billion for shelters and needs, 60 billion to Ukraine, 14 to Israel, 10 billion to humanitarian aid in Gaza, the West Bank, and then 5 billion to the Indo-Pacific region. I mean, in terms of money breakdown, of course, that's all ridiculous. I think I just need to say it as a non-starter. It's treason to be spending more in other countries than we are on our own problems right now. But I think if you get into the specifics of the mechanics, I think what's frustrating about it is that we've really been lied to about this bill. And Mike Lee's right about this. We could have seen the text on this bill weeks ago, months ago,
100%.
but it's being
Right.
released on a Sunday evening right before votes need to be held on it, of course. And we're talking about a 370-page document. So, I mean, I read through a decent amount of it, but at the same time, it's 370 pages. It's all legalese. And the way that it's been phrased is frustrating. It's been phrased as ending catch and release. Of course, that's only half true, maybe not even half true. It's just changing which groups will be caught and released. There's new groups now that are going to be caught and released. So it doesn't end
Exactly.
that. It's changing the asylum seeking process. One of the arguments that I saw, minor tweak to asylum, but that was like the big, oh, this is
Fig
progress,
leaf.
was because right now how the asylum process works is you will go to the border, claim asylum. You're already coached by coyotes how to basically say the right things to be taken in as asylum. So people aren't crossing the border and just running off. They're going straight to U.S. Customs and Border to claim asylum. Is already the big difference. And so what happens is you could be given a year to 10 years to show up to a court date to basically confirm, are you here for asylum or not? So what the bill's claiming it's going to do is create a special asylum system to hear all these claims within 6 months, which of course sounds positive. But who are we putting that responsibility in the hands of? Alejandro Mayorkas, who's currently about to get impeached by the Senate, the DHS,
No,
that's completely
by
abused
the House, by the House.
by the House, right? So, but we're putting it in the hands of people that clearly have no respect for the sovereignty of America. So it's kind of like, oh well, we changed this, but at the same time, it's like, well, Biden can just override it any second, and we're putting it in charge of Mayorkas, who's literally about to get impeached. So it's frustrating, I think, to many Americans that just wanted to see a very clear, simple solution to the problem. And of course, anytime you play games with bipartisan stuff, turns out no one really is happy. And I think that's why many people feel betrayed right now. That's why I feel betrayed right now. It's like we elect these people for solutions, not to basically exacerbate the problem and then, handshake, we're all doing a great job type thing. JD Vance has been good on this. He zeroed in on that line that you said, Erica, like this doesn't close the border. And then, of course, everyone else latched onto it because that's all that people really want. If someone would have just said this closes the border, I think people really would have been happy. But of course, there's like too much hubris to even say that,
Right.
If this were about the border, why would they increase worker visas in this bill? Like, what does that have to do with border stuff? And it just shows that the U.S. Chamber of Commerce wants cheaper workers. That's what that's about. And the fact is, there are elements of this bill that could engender bipartisan support. Like, if you really just want to make it about border security, forget the 5,000 a day for an emergency. Forget about the worker visas. Ryan Girdusky says just change the definition of asylum to increase it to a credible fear. Have border wall funding and tighten those rules around parole, and then just do that and be done. But everything in Washington, they always want the comprehensive deal to try to get a million things done. And that's actually bad politics because there's no one believes Washington, right? No one believes them to get this stuff done. They always say you have to do comprehensive reform. That's what our U.S. bishops keep calling for, comprehensive reform. Why do it? Why do it comprehensive? Politicians love to say, well, we solved it because we threw everything in the kitchen sink into a bill, called it comprehensive, and then we can walk away from it and never have to deal with it again. No, why don't you take care of the 3 or 4 most important things right away, fix that, and then next year, 2 or 3 more, and just take it 1 year at a time. You can't try to solve a million things at once. Try to do some small things first, like, I don't know, secure the border with the secure border wall, tighten the parole, change the asylum criteria, do some certain things like that first.
And I think this is an ongoing frustration, like you're saying, Josh, this whole comprehensive thing. It's not just about the border or about foreign spending or about, a budget bill, but it's that every single time you have these massive bundles of everything. I mean, I can think of like a 5-page bill that would address everything Josh just said, that anyone with a brain could read in 20 minutes, and then you implement it. And instead, it's like, and we're going to put all of our Israel funding in here, and we're going to put all our Ukraine funding in here, and all this and those. And you just keep
Well,
ending up with these massive things that are ineffective, and at worst, I mean, they're meaningless to the point that anyone could come in who's in a seat of power, like a Mayorkas or a Biden, and use it the way they want to use it.
Well,
So
that's the
again,
game, right? I
yeah,
mean,
it is the game. It is
the game
totally the game.
game is basically
It's a
tying
power
things
game.
into the bill that have nothing to do with what people actually want, and then when you oppose it, they'll say, "Well, you don't support Israel. Oh, you don't support
Exactly.
Ukraine. Oh, you don't support the fentanyl detection that we put in." I actually saw a Democrat staffer basically say, "Oh man, House GOP wants to be on record opposing fentanyl detection devices to be sent to the border," and it's like, I guess the straw man arguments I feel like aren't working anymore. I think
okay.
people are too angry. People know
I
the
hope
problem.
not.
I
And
don't know.
Tom, you said, wouldn't it be nice to have some sort of common sense legislation that could get some support? Like, what if we had a bill that required the Department of Homeland Security to resume activities to construct a wall on the border? Like, let's say you prohibited, DHS from processing the entry of non-U.S. nationals arriving between ports of entry. What if you limited asylum eligibility? Just certain things that you could do to try to move the ball forward, require the DHS to create an electronic employment eligibility confirmation modeled after E-Verify to make sure that all employers are only hiring, the appropriate employees. These are all in a bill called the Secure the Border Act, passed by the Republican House.
HR
Chuck
2.
Schumer, it was
Right.
done 13 months ago. The Republicans were dealing with this issue. Chuck Schumer did nothing to the bill. And now, because it's become so humongous, this problem at the border, now Senate Democrats are freaking out, and they got a few sucker Republicans to sign off on a really, really bad bill. My prediction, this bill goes nowhere. This immigration deal is going to get torpedoed. Trust me. I just cannot see it. I agree. Speaker Johnson and Majority Leader Scalise are saying this is not going anywhere in the House. And therefore, I think this doesn't even, I'd be surprised if he even gets a vote in the Senate.
Yeah. But I guess the unfortunate reality of this is all this goes on while the problem still remains a huge problem.
And what will happen, Tom? What do you think will happen? I say that the Democrats will blame the Republicans for the defeat of this bill, saying, oh, they wanted it to fail because they wanted to have this as an issue in the election.
Oh
When
my
in fact,
gosh.
we passed the bill, an immigration reform bill, 12 months ago. And it's been waiting for the Senate Democrats to do something about it. So
Yeah, and that has to be the
happy
response.
birthday, Josh.
Happy birthday, Josh.
Yeah, no,
I get to celebrate with 11 million more people. So that's pretty cool.
There you go.
Bigger party. Bigger Democrat party.
Yeah. So Nighthawk, if you want to pull up the PG Keenan tweet, which we have many internal fans of PG Keenan's work. I did an interview with her a little while back for the Loopcast, which was a lot of fun. But I think this is kind of what it gets into here, because this bill most likely not going to go anywhere. Politicians are going to blame each other. I mean, that's kind of the game, right? But I think when you reach a personal level, maybe talking to friends or relatives or seeing discourse online, the conversation about secure border policy becomes one of, well, you're not Christian. You're not being Christian. And I've even seen people use this already with this bill that got released last night, which of course is a garbage bill, but people opposing that are not Christian. They don't care about people, this and that. And you kind of exposed me there. I gave a little shout out to Catholic Vote in the comments of this. But basically, for the audio listeners, this tweet is: the only Catholics allowed to politicize Catholicism are left-wing Catholics. The rest get the "and you call yourself a Christian" retort. And we all have internal thoughts about this for sure. This is something that comes up almost ad nauseum. But Josh and Erica, what would you say back to someone, if they still, I guess, are taking this "you're not being Christian" retort to heart at this point?
Yeah. I'm like,
What
define
happens?
your terms. Define your terms. That's where I go. I'm like, what does it mean to be a Christian? What does it mean to have love and welcoming, a loving and welcoming attitude towards our brothers and sisters? Well, it doesn't mean like just go watch the footage coming across from the border. Go read the reports of human trafficking and exploitation. Go and, watch the documentaries about mothers whose children have died from fentanyl that they got through these cartels coming across the border. What is Christian here? Is it to just say they all come across, we give them what they want? I mean, I want to point out too, Peachy also earlier in that thread, or I think it was a separate post maybe, she pointed out that this bill here, this comprehensive reform, also sends $1 billion,
Nearly
you're
933.
oh,
Yeah,
right. Oh, sorry.
It's like making something at the grocery store like
999
$3.99
million.
so that
Yeah.
they don't have to
no,
like
it's actually it's
prices.
933 dollars that goes to these Christian charities like Catholic Charities, Lutheran Information and Refugee Services, Church World Services. So
Right.
you have to ask a question whether or not is it at least possible that the recipients of these might have some sort of, I don't know, perhaps biased opinion on the efficacy of this kind of legislation? Are they motivated in any way? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe they just honestly love doing this and they just don't mind getting gobs of cash from the taxpayers for it. But maybe
Right, and
that
I think
does
that the
color their
biggest
thinking.
response right, the biggest response to these accusations that somehow it's not Christian to wanna do something about a sovereign state's borders, I think the biggest response is to just, like, line up the facts and, like, let's look at what's actually happening instead of speaking in platitudes and vagaries, which is what our government does with these massive bills, just these vague, like, "Oh, but actually go and drill down and investigate what is actually happening there at the border. I mean, we just had this story come out this weekend that these it was at these five illegal immigrants who beat up cops in New York City. They were let out without bail. They're let out from jail without bail for beating up these cops. We know they did it. They say they do it. And as he's leaving the jailhouse, one of them flips off the camera with a double bird there. And
Yeah.
what happens? What happened from there? They walked themselves to a faith-based Catholic charity. We do not know which one yet. We're trying to find it out, so looking for leads. They walked themselves to a Catholic charity in New York City, which pays for their bus tickets for them to flee to California, to Southern California. So these guys just get a free trip to Southern
Couldn't they just go a
California
little
out of
bit
the
more
state.
south and get them on the other side of the border? What an
Well,
idea.
maybe that I mean, hope they're just going back, but it's just
Yeah,
if
unlikely.
that's what our faith-based charities are doing with this almost $1 billion, then we need some serious, like, what does it mean to be faith-based? And
But I
I
just don't
don't want to be
understand this.
associated with that.
It drives me crazy. What are other countries around the world browbeaten and scolded into having no borders because and Christianity is invoked against
Not
them?
Ukraine.
Yes, they are. The EU, the entire EU operates like that. They basically
Yeah, I
have
mean
completely open borders.
it's bizarre. It's like, and what is the end game here? Like what about all these advocates of illegal immigration who think it's just wonderful to have an open border? See, now I thought it was pretty interesting. Governor Abbott has changed the game here in the conversations, and so did Governor DeSantis by taking so many of these illegal immigrants and sending them into Chicago and into New York. And it was only then that we had people go, wow, that's kind of now suddenly it's not just something distant where I can signal how virtuous I am. Now I actually have to deal with it. And they displace kids from, high schools and gymnasiums. Oh, can't use your gym anymore. Sorry, we're housing illegal immigrants. And like I said, at O'Hare, where they just take over an entire terminal for illegal immigrants. But I think we need to do this another step further. So like we should go to like the rich suburbs of Washington, D.C., like McLean, and Chevy Chase, and put a bunch of illegal immigrants in those neighborhoods and see maybe
Yes.
that they'll get their attitudes changed a little bit.
Yep.
I think
like that's a great idea.
and it's like, the idea, they make it seem like it's immoral to prevent entry at all times. Like, so if someone comes down the block in my neighborhood and says, I'm hungry, and I'd be like, oh, well, here's a hamburger or something like that. Sure. He goes, no, actually, let me into your house and let me sleep here forever. It's like, yeah, buddy, I've got 6 kids. I'm not going to let some stranger off the street into my house. So, but apparently that's the way the left works. It's like anyone can come into your country and you have no ability to say no. Like, why is that? Why is every other country get to be a country, but not mine? We're just
There's
a
a
parking
really
lot. We're just a migrant farm for the rich. Like, this is so stupid.
there's a really old video that someone made as a prank where in Australia they dressed up as indigenous people and then they went up to someone's apartment building that had a sign like we are on indigenous land, like this is
I love that.
borrowed, not we don't own it. And so they walked up and knocked on the door
Stolen,
like,
not borrowed.
hey,
Yeah.
we're indigenous people and we were just thinking maybe we could come back and have some food, hang out, maybe stay here for a few nights. I don't know. The people at the door, of course, are kind of like, I don't think that's what that means. It was like, oh yeah, that was a classic. That's an old one. But yeah, I think we need to switch the vibe up right now. Very frustrating what's going on there, but we need to switch the vibe up. We saw an article. First off, shout out to CC Pappas. She has been shouting out the podcast a few times. We appreciate it. She's doing a lot of great work. She has a death grip on Catholic women from like 20 to 35, maybe. I've not met or like my wife will never stop. You know, she's always sharing what's going on. So shout out to CC Pappas. But anyway, she was interviewed for this article from the Standard. The article is titled Holier Than Thou, The Rise of Gen Z Catholicism. And while some people have thought that Erica is Gen Z, she indeed is not. It is me who is Gen Z. Surprise, surprise. Josh, we found out his real age today. Happy birthday again.
Well, and they think you're like, 20. They think Erica's like 30, and they think this guy's like the old guy, like pushing, Social Security age or whatever. So
it's because you're so wise, though. You're so wise, and you're always right on the predictions. Real. Yeah. So, but basically, I thought this was a really interesting article.
Yeah.
It, of course, features Sabrina Carpenter here with her very blasphemous music video that she filmed in a Brooklyn Catholic church. Notice what's going on behind her. It was not one with green carpet or spaceship-like architecture.
On a retread here, right? I mean, it's not even that imaginative.
Yeah. So, but basically, the article was about how specifically there is a fascination with the Latin Mass when it comes to Gen Z Catholics, young Catholics. The author said she was raised Catholic, I think similar to maybe like Martin Scorsese, where he says that he has the imprint of Catholicism, as they say, the scent of incense, but not practicing. But if they're asked if they're Catholic, they'll say, yes, I am Catholic. But she was interviewing people who are actually Catholic and Gen Z. And a lot of these people came back to the church after basically trying out, I think, everything else that the world offered. And I think what's so interesting about who she interviewed, she was talking to someone that basically said, I was really attracted to the Latin Mass because it is identical no matter where I go. And everyone talks about the Catholic Church being universal, and you get an interesting flavor when it comes to Novus Ordo Masses, but with this Latin Mass, it's like it is exactly the same if I go to it in a different country, go to it in America. And I actually do, just like, and from an anecdotal standpoint, I think I don't know if Pope Francis knows this is going on, but the more that you kind of persecute something and make it a little risque, I think the more attractive it kind of becomes. Like there's just some type of human psychology there where it's like, ooh, it's a little bit of a bad boy secretive, like this is a little restricted. And so of course you get the natural fascination.
Like the mugshot of Trump, you're saying?
Exactly, like the mugshot of Trump. But people basically were just saying, there's something really different going on here. Of course, the wisdom offered is different than the wisdom of the times. We're talking about an organization that offers the advice to stay monogamous and in a committed relationship, be open to children, as opposed to the secular message where sleep with whoever you want, don't have kids, do whatever you want. I think people are really finding a purpose in the wisdom that comes with it and a real challenge. And I think that's really attractive to people.
Can I tee off a second here?
Tee off, Josh.
That statement right there, it transcends no matter where you are. I think that's so true. I think that's cutting into a big part about why people like the Latin Mass. And again, I don't go to Latin Mass myself. I'm just trying to help people understand and transcendental chants. Again, what is it? The biggest problem I would say with the current Novus Ordo Mass is that it's just kind of bland and it kind of, it doesn't really move you. There's no highs and lows. It's just kind of like, and all that you get out of it is what everyone who comes there brings to it, which is why, like, the transcendental nature of the Latin Mass, what they're talking about there with the chants and like the reverence that's brought to it, you feel like you're getting something out of it because there's something more than just what you and everyone else who's there brings to it. It almost feels like you're getting a piece of God coming down and giving it to you rather than just meeting together for a supper club. So I think that's what's getting at it. Can you still
Yeah.
worship God in the Novus Ordo Mass? Yes, of
We,
course.
we have an update. We have an update. Sorry. Someone emailed in saying that they really like the show, especially Erica, which is, of course, no surprise.
Yes.
But they took
Thank
issue with
you.
you,
Yeah.
Josh. They said every time
do
you
I.
bring up the TLM, every time Josh speaks about something related to traditional Catholicism or the TLM itself, he always makes it abundantly clear he is not a trad, that he doesn't go to Latin Mass, and basically gives the impression that he finds it distasteful.
I
Josh,
don't.
I'm
I
pretty
don't
sure
find it
that's not how you
distasteful.
think. I would like you just clear the air. We've had someone email in, clear the
All
air
right.
on it. What's going on?
I don't go to the traditional Latin Mass because my wife doesn't like it so much and whatever. So I think it's okay. I like it. I'm trad curious, but I find out once you become part of the TLM, people then just they crank up how much more you've got to do it this way, you got to do it that way, and they just kind of get into a fever pitch on it. I like going to it. I like enjoy it. So my whole point is, why do I say that when I bring that up? I'll explain. Precisely because the people who attack the traditional Latin Mass, they say, oh, well, you're just stuck in this and that stuff like that. I'm not defending it for my own ability to go, is my whole point. Like I remember when in my 20s and in my 30s or whatever, how much people would persecute those who went to the Latin Mass. And I just thought to myself, if this is something that they like and it brings them closer to God, then just let them do it. Why the vitriol? Like I saw so many bishops get so angry at people who went to the traditional Latin Mass, and I'm like, what is up with it? It just felt like that these bishops had a visceral, emotional reaction, like, oh my gosh, we're done with this. We had this in the 50s and 60s, and we're done. I don't want to go back to this. It's a very childish emotional reaction that is now best represented by Pope Francis. He's the one who's doing that now. He's having this childlike, emotional, negative reaction to it. And it's like, it boggles my mind. And it's like, to me, it was like if there was a certain tribe in Africa that had practiced Catholicism a certain way for like 1300, 1700 years or something like that. And it was a little goofy, maybe some drums, but it was nothing immoral, right? And it brought people closer to God. People would be like, well, that's the way the people in Ethiopia do it. Let them do it. Everyone would be totally okay with it. But if people do the traditional Latin Mass, which has been going on for, I don't know, 500, 600, 700 years, how many ever years, and people freak out in such a negative way. So I am saying it this way as a person who is defending something. I'm defending people who just should be able to worship God this way without being yelled at, screamed at, and persecuted. And I go to the Latin Mass sometimes too, but it's not my thing. Whatever.
Okay. Now that it's cleared up, we want the star of the show, Erica. What are your thoughts on
My hot take on Latin
TLM
Mass
and this article and Gen Z?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of along the same lines as Josh. Our family goes, we have the gift of a very reverent Novus Ordo really close to us. We have a TLM up the road too. I've sent my kids, one of my approaches to TLM is like, it's the language of the different rites of the church is so mutually enriching and beautiful, not only for your like personal prayer life. So it's not like it's a personal, like, oh, I like this aesthetic of the Melkites, so that's where I go, or, that's just like a super American thing to do, but that it's mutually enriching historically and for the church as a whole. So something we've really tried to do intentionally as parents is bring our kids to different rites in the church. So when we lived in Atlanta, we went to a Byzantine rite for that year. We went like once a month, we go to the Byzantine rite. And I sent my daughters to Morning Star Camp, which is run by an order that is in union with Rome. But one of their apostolates, one of their charisms is the preservation of the older rite. And so they do Latin Mass there. And I think when you come at these different rites like a child, instead of like the manager of some big corporation, which unfortunately is how a lot of our church bureaucracy seems to approach these different rites, when you come at it as a child who loves God and wants to worship God in communion with others, then you see the beauty of it. You're open to the beauty of that diversity, which I think it's so This was another thing, like the Latin Mass was just recently suppressed in New Haven, and everyone's told, well, you can drive up to Waterbury, Connecticut. Well, for some people, that's like an hour-long drive. They live in a city. Not all of them even have cars, but it's like, we're just going to shut it down to be in keeping with Pope Francis. And it was really hurtful to that community because the approach was not to treat them as a community of persons who are enriched by this. It was just, this is a problem. It's not in line with the current papacy. And so we're just shutting you down. And you have this other option, which isn't really an option practically for a lot of families and people. So it's, again, like if we could, if we could all just get along. I'm sounding so kumbaya and motherly, right? Am I doing, this is a motherly vibe? But again, I think that it would be,
Erica, Josh is fighting people in the YouTube comments right now.
I can see it. I'm watching it as I'm talking. I'm like, Josh is having his own life and conversation.
Even when you're talking,
you know, kids in their cell phones these days. Geez, Josh can't even pay attention to his co-host. He's fighting.
I listened to what she was saying, and she was obviously more interested in what I was saying than what she was saying herself. I mean, that's not my fault.
All right, Josh, stop fighting people in the comments right now. Erica, would you like to wrap up your point respectfully?
Yeah, can I respectfully wrap up my point? Yeah, it's like just have more respect. No, but again, some people thought that this particular article was like slamming and dunking on the TLM or Catholicism, but I actually found it to be really just, you know, a former Catholic taking another look back at like, okay, I left the church. Why are so many people in my generation attracted to this like form of worship? And just a really thoughtful kind of outsider's view. I hope that the author of this article, I think her name's Emily, I hope she comes back. I hope that she continues to pursue this line of questioning because it's a really interesting read. So bottom line, go read the article, get an outsider's view. And for heaven's sake, stop shutting down the Latin Mass, Bishop. My Catherine of Siena moment for the day.
Thank you for that, Erica. And this live format is going to be a challenge for keeping Josh from fighting people during your answers.
He's having fun.
Stop.
Josh is exercise.
Stop. Josh, you can mute yourself and go into the comments again. But you, again, as someone from personal experience, being of this demographic, maybe speaking to what's going on, I think I can speak for myself, but Gen Z, I think generally growing up with the internet, growing up with cell phones, growing up with social media, we've had to basically become trained in being really good BS detectors, misinformation, if you will, because we have so much information. The new skill isn't trying to get the information. It's basically trying to determine which information is true and false. And I think it's given people a really low bar in my age group for nonsense. Like we have a really good bar for nonsense. The one thing, and I'm sure other people can maybe speak to this as well, is that during COVID, which churches didn't stop administering the Eucharist? Which churches didn't shut down? They were all TLM parishes. Just saying. I think there were some maybe out there that were not, that didn't shut down, but basically hands tied. A lot of people just said, well, we're not going to have mass. We're not going to administer the Eucharist. Probably the greatest Catholic scandal of my time outside of course, the church abuse crisis. I don't want to speak to that. And of course, another thing I'd like to say on that, I see a lot of people more upset about the TLM than I do about literal pedophiles in our church right now, which is just unbelievable. I mean, the fact that we still have the art guy, Rupnik, his art's still everywhere right now. We have a guy in Belgium who is still a bishop that abused two of his nephews. I mean, we're talking about a papacy that really has not taken the abuse crisis seriously. And that's extremely frustrating to me. And that's what of course, you get the division on TLM, but that's what we should all really be frustrated and focusing on rooting out. But yeah, COVID. I mean, my parents now go to a traditional Latin Mass because it was the only place that never stopped. They didn't brag about it and they weren't fighting authority. They just didn't stop. They didn't make a big deal about it. They're like, look, we're going to do what we've always done for thousands of years. We're going to administer the Eucharist. We're going to say mass. And I think that won a lot of people over. And from a BS detector perspective, when I went to a church where they rolled out plexiglass blast shields, took the Eucharist like it was a cracker and handed it under the blast shield while wearing a mask and hand sanitizer everywhere. Like these people are unserious and they don't actually care about the truth and or our faith. So as soon as I saw that, I was like, I'm not going back to certain places ever again. And I have to say that TLM did a great job of continuing what's always been done and being faithful to the Catholics that really needed that service. So yeah.
Well, Well,
Part way
Yeah.
of
it's
saying
not
that.
just that you grew up in the internet. Part of the thing about the internet, what that point is that there's no filters. You didn't have to go through. So the people who are supporting the traditional at mass could use the internet to try to expose people. Hey, have you ever thought about worshiping this way? And they're able to reach people that way. And so that's the biggest thing about the internet. Why our elites hate the internet is because it gives the access of everyday people to share stuff. Sometimes goofy stuff, sometimes weird stuff, conspiracy stuff. Sure. But just you have unfiltered access. You don't go only through the official channels, of corporate media or whatever. And so people are able to share things. Have you ever seen this? Have you ever done this? And so that's actually kind of an exciting time that we live in. And of course, the elites in Washington absolutely hate it.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on from that. So this is something that I actually want to become more a regular part of our programming. And this is cool to do live with the chat here as well. So just so you know, we're going to call it the Erica electric vehicle saga. Erica used one of her
Not
Twilight
again.
Zone slots we're still going on electric vehicles. Not specifically electric vehicles, but more segment point. So she used one of her slots to basically reveal some frustration she had about electric vehicles and the government policy that pushes them, and the fact that they failed her in a time of need when literally needed to get into the airport, being very pregnant. Understandable. So we had a listener, Sue, who clearly put a lot of time into a rebuttal, basically saying, Erica, did you know about this? Did you know about that? Very well researched, very well written, very respectful. And so I read it. I read it on the podcast. I actually really appreciated that she read it in. And honestly, how I think about it from our end of the screen is we sometimes say things quick because we got to fit it in, or maybe we didn't explain it in a way that everyone understands. So when people email in like that respectfully, it gives us a good opportunity to further clarify our points or sharpen our arguments or maybe learn something new. So I thought it was really cool that she took the time to do that. And so Erica, of course, responded and deftly, may I say. And so Sue
Great
actually
word.
wrote back in, and I'd like to read the response. I just want to say, again, we appreciate you, Sue. She said, hi, Tom. I just finished listening to the segment and wanted to thank you for your compliments and time. I spent a lot of time putting that together, and I was surprised by how thoroughly you listed out my points. I think a lot of people wouldn't have taken the time to do that, so thank you. I still have points I would like to make and rebuttals to some of the points y'all made, but I appreciate you guys giving my position a fair representation. Funnily enough, I totally agree with the point that the government shouldn't mandate the transition to EVs. I think that is honestly a disservice to EVs because they absolutely can sell based on their own merits without the government getting involved. I also think there are still a lot of use cases that EVs have not solved yet, such as towing, which is a big problem with EVs at the moment, and I'm hopeful for the future. Basically, all this to say, if you guys have things that you want to hear clarifications on, or have an argument you'd like to present to us, I actually really love, I'm a little weird. I love reading them. I think it's just a great
It's super
opportunity for us
fun.
to interact. It's really
Yeah.
refreshing and fun. So shout out
And
to Sue again, man. And if you guys have stuff, email in.
I agree with Jan in the comments. I will get a horse before I get an EV.
My kids would love it if I went back to horses. They're, can I have a horse, Mom? Like, nope, not in Connecticut.
I don't know how I'm going to get 6 kids out of a horse, but we'll see.
So Josh Mercer again
There's
in
Josh.
the comments here, ridiculous. I don't even know how much he listened to that. I mean, seriously, dude, like this is like we
I
might need
got to
to
update that photo. There's not any gray in the beard.
Update.
Yeah. So again, if you want to participate in the fun too, if you're listening to this on podcast, we are going to be live every Monday, noon Eastern. I've been yelled at a few times by producers. You need to tell people when you're going to be live. I'm like, that's a good point. Noon Eastern time, every Monday, we will be live. We will be on YouTube. Come hang out with us. It's a lot of fun. If not, thanks for listening. We appreciate all our listeners. You want to subscribe on YouTube, help us out, like it, give us a review, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Those things all really help. So yes, I'm saying that. Producer Nighthawk, you're welcome. Do what I can. So we move now into Twilight Zone. Josh, I think you had something about bounce houses.
Okay, so I mean, this is a phenomenon I can't even grasp. I don't understand this. So in Washington, D.C., of all places, of course, silly town that it is, they now have adult playgrounds and bounce houses and you can jump into, like at Chuck E. Cheese, they have those
Yeah, we
things
got to see this, Nighthawk.
where you can dive into like the pit full of all those little balls or whatever and play. So I can't even believe this. I mean, it's one thing to have the hip new bars where you can throw axes. Like, okay, that's kind of cool. I'm a Viking. I like that. Okay.
Log
Bouncy
tossing.
houses. Bouncy houses. So you bring
Sounds kinda
you bring
fun,
your
low
kids
key.
here. Well, people in DC are married to their jobs. They don't care about having kids hardly. And so no, these are adult bouncy houses, play spaces for adults. Is this just boggles my
Josh,
mind?
you haven't levied any significant criticisms. All you've basically said is like, okay, bounce houses and it boggles your mind. Like, what's your problem with adults having a little bit of fun after drafting up some legislation for the border?
So I remember I was in college and a couple of my friends were like, "Hey, do you want to play some video games?" I'm like, "What? Video games? I'm 20 years old. I'm playing video games. Like, let's go out and like have some fun or whatever." And then they're like, "We're going to go to, Cedar Point, the amusement park." I'm like, "What are you, 15? Like what?" I'm like, "No, I'm not going to a playground. I mean, what?
Josh, what do you have
Roller
against
Yeah.
fun?
coaster?"
Can I just say to you, I love the line in this article where it's like, there's no need to feel cringe about the adult baby life. I'm like, there's no need
That
to
yes,
feel
absolutely.
yes,
Like
you need to feel
chapter and verse.
cringy. Yeah.
So
See,
like
this is a
grown
good reason. Okay, back to the whole like have more kids resolution from the Yale debate last week. I mean, a good reason to have children is because then you can go play games at things like bouncy
That's a
houses and
great
it's not cringe. You take your kid, right? Like Pogo, take your son,
yes.
you can go do kid things and have the relaxation and it's not weird
I
and
was
like
hanging out with
failure to take off.
my 10-year-old sister-in-law,
Yeah.
and we were watching movies. And I forgot how good animated movies are. Like, what a great excuse to watch animated movies.
Oh,
Josh,
The
I'm sure you're gonna
Incredibles.
come
Yeah.
from the clouds about how animation's ridiculous and enjoying animated movies are not fun.
Well, if you
But
watch it with your kids, like The
Go watch
Incredibles
it
actually
with
has a good
children,
story
then
to
it's
it.
fun.
all right, good. I'm glad you're not anti movies. However,
I mean,
I
like
do
this,
draw the line. Josh, wait
it,
1 second, 1 second. You can argue in the comments with people for a second.
all right.
If there is an adult Facebook group called Bluey Adults. Are you familiar with
Oh
Bluey?
no. We watch Bluey ad nauseum. Do you want me to sing it to
Oh my
you?
God.
No, thank you. But there is a Facebook group where adults get tattoos of Bluey, the animated cartoon for children, and they watch it
No.
and enjoy it themselves and like break apart the episodes and everything like that. It's real. I promise you, look it up. Nighthawk can probably find it if he wants to, but I don't even know if you want to go down that dark hole in the internet. But yes, there are Bluey adults out there and they really
I
are
believe
in
it.
that group showing off their tats. So
Yeah, I
Josh,
think the
It's like
whole oh, sorry. Go, Josh. I
it's
was
like the
jumping in.
bronies phenomenon. These adult men dressed and they're fans of My Little Pony, and you're like, I want to deport you more than the 11 million people that came across the border illegally. Like
I
this is
almost lost my
insane.
water.
I mean, this is crazy. And then
Oh yeah.
yeah.
and
Oh
then this,
no.
yes,
This was great. Yeah, check out the screen.
the case for sleeping with stuffed animals as an adult. I'm holding back, but it's like if I were on a spaceship, these are the people who make it through the airlock. Goodbye. I mean, this is insane. Are you kidding me?
New
And
section
then
of
you
the
get done with
podcast.
the adult playground, and
Nick
at the end
Josh,
they're
I
like
agree.
adult babies. This is what they're calling these people going to these playgrounds. Adult babies need nourishment. The perfect excuse to make sugar your entire meal at one of these cereal bar chains. So you go to a restaurant to get cereal. It's like you're too dang lazy to go to the grocery store and buy a $5 box of sugar bombs. You got to go out to eat and get a cinnamon toast crunch somewhere. I mean, this is like unbelievable to me. I mean, Jim Gaffigan made the funny joke like, yeah, I guess I'll go down the street to a Subway because I can't make a sandwich in my own apartment, But these people can't even eat cereal.
Josh, you
How
need some water,
difficult.
dude.
I mean,
If I could just
drive me
wrap this
crazy.
up.
Yeah.
And the TLM is a problem from Ann.
It was awesome. Yeah, Anne.
Shout out Ann for real. Someone said that they turn on their podcast right after the Angelus. How great is that? Janice.
Oh, thanks,
Thank you.
Janice.
Hopefully you pray for us when you do pray the Angelus.
That's a woman who has her priorities straight. Angelus, then Josh.
And then we
That's
have Brian. He said he's a fan of Josh in rant mode. I'm nodding over here, Josh. It's the only thing that
Don't
he could do
encourage him,
to
Brian.
keep from interacting with you
Here's
guys in
the
the
thing,
comment
though.
section.
What we're seeing in our culture today is, the babification of adults and trying to pretend like children are adults. It's getting both things a whack. So we're introducing porn books to kids in grade school, and then we're having adults sleeping with teddy bears and going to the, eating cereal and going to these goofy playhouses. It's like, give me a break. Stay in your lane, people.
All right, new section of the podcast unlocked, making Josh angry about things that are fun for children. So, but unfortunately, we now have to move on. That
It's
was
not
very
just
fun.
Brian, Cheryl, and Jan. They were with me too on this.
You have a
got
little
the
army
fan
in the comment section here of your followers. Erica, you have a Twilight Zone though.
Yeah, I'm going to bring it down a notch here. This is a little more disturbing, but it's also about things that are out of whack. And this is our Department of Justice. So last week, we got a sentence for this guy from Ohio named Eamon Penny. And the DOJ had been prosecuting him, making a pretty big deal about it. Like this was a big story for them that, oh, look, we do prosecute people who vandalize churches. So this 20-year-old guy, he pled guilty last fall to hate crime charges, which are super serious under the Church Arson Prevention Act. And the DOJ just recently, he has been sentenced to 216 months in prison with 3 additional years of supervised release. Now, why did Penny go after this church? And why is the DOJ so darn proud of its success? Well, because Penny targeted the church, according to the charges. He wanted to throw 2 Molotov cocktails because he was angry that the church's plan was to host 2 drag events, which were marketed to children. And so he goes after this church in Ohio that was promoting LGBT and welcoming and blah, blah, blah by hosting drag events. So, of course, the DOJ was fervently prosecuting Penny. Meanwhile, the other news that we covered on this show last week was that we had the Tennessee 6, right? These pro-life activists who go and, according to their lawyers, no laws were broken. They're singing hymns outside of an abortion clinic. And those guys are getting the book thrown at them. And we also, like during this Biden administration, and again, we've covered this so often, we've had over 350 attacks on Catholic churches by groups like Jane's Revenge, who go after places for their pro-life or pro-family traditional sexuality doctrine. And it's just been a shrug and a yawn, to quote our friend Tom McCluskey on the Hill. It's been a shrug and a yawn from the Biden administration. But when the church is hosting drag shows and some guy goes after it, they are more than happy to throw the book at him. I mean, they closed this down in basically 2 years, start to finish. And one of the comments at a recent testimony by FBI Director Chris Wray, and again, this was echoing Merrick Garland over a year ago, saying, well, these pro-life people, they tend to do things in the daytime and out in the open. And
that's
then
that's a direct quote, by the way.
That
that's
is
not
a direct
paraphrase. That's a direct quote.
That's
so
not
we
Erica.
Can't get them because
they do things out in the open, so we can
nighttime.
get them. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, since when did the FBI have trouble with night vision? I mean,
they can't even lie effectively. It's
not really. Right. I know. So again, 2-tier justice system. And for anyone out there who is still like, I don't know if I can vote in this election. Trump is such a bad man. Biden's such a bad man. I'm just going to sit this one out. Well, okay. So you've got these two guys. We've got an option. We have a binary, right? A binary, to use the term that is not allowed. But you have a binary choice. One of these very bad men, let's just grant them the premise, right? One of these very bad men resulted in the overturn of Roe v. Wade, the lowest border crossings numbers ever, strong economy minus the whole COVID thing. The other guy, we end up with this DOJ that is prosecuting pro-lifers and targeting Catholics, and shamelessly with a 2-tiered justice system. We have the side-by-side, guys. You can't sit this one out, because your choice actually will affect how your kids are able to live in this country and your grandkids and on down the line. So there's no sitting this one out.
And it's both Biden and Trump, neither one of them can serve more than one more term. So whoever gets elected, if it's Biden, he serves 4 more years and then he can't serve anymore. Same with Trump, they'll be terminating it out. So it's not like, oh, if you let that guy in, he might go 8 years. No, they're both can only have one more term, people.
Exactly.
Which one do you want? Which one do you want?
Word. Okay, so I got a ride along for us. Nighthawk, if you want to pull up, if anyone's been curious about what it's like to cross from the United States to Mexico, someone did it. So I keep talking about this guy, Andrew Callahan, Channel 5 News, his YouTube channel. He's doing stuff that I'm not seeing anyone else doing, basically, before we started this video, he went to Eagle Pass, got in touch with someone that said they would take him across to Mexico, and then he was going to do a ride along with cartels to see their route in person, take their route in person into the US, which is just wild. I mean,
Wow.
nerve-wracking, dangerous,
Amazing.
all the above. I mean, this
Super
guy,
dangerous.
there's nowhere this guy's not going. It's crazy. But this doesn't include the full ride along, but there was a moment in here that I was just like, I need to share this with people. It was an insane watch. This is them crossing to Mexico. Go ahead and play it for me, Nighthawk.
Toll booth with 2 attendants who barely notice us.
It's pretty crazy how easy it is for us to cross.
Yup. If you got $1, you're good.
Cheddar gives a teller $1 US, and the border opens.
Thank you.
So we're now basically entering Mexico, and it was that easy.
That easy, bro. Once we get to the end of this bridge, there is like a little hut you go through, but they don't check for ID. They don't pat you down, nothing.
They don't check for ID.
They don't check for ID at all.
But then on the
Oh
other
my
hand,
gosh.
is that a Border Patrol boat?
Yeah.
So that's the Rio Grande right there. Huh?
Yep. Oh, look, they're getting married right now.
Oh,
Hell yeah. Hey, congratulations.
oh my God.
What?
Yeah, they're getting married on the bridge. So he or she gets her citizenship.
What?
So, yes, that's how it works.
Well, some say it's the right way to come into the country. Others argue it's an immigration loophole as they exchange vows and say, I do, at the doorstep of our border.
So one of them is probably like full Mexican citizen, and one of them does have U.S. papers. So one of them marrying the other allows the other to now become a U.S. citizen.
30 seconds after witnessing the fascinating border marriage, me and Cheddar arrived in Mexico and entered the plaza where the coyotes said they'd be waiting.
All right, so we're in Mexico now.
We're in Mexico.
At first, we couldn't find them.
Oh shit! I think these fools are over here, bro.
Then, in the corner of the plaza, we
Sorry
saw
about
3
that.
dudes. One with a gold chain and 2 others. I wasn't quite sure,
All right, you
but
can
I
pause it
think
now.
these are my guys.
A
So
couple of doctors and lawyers there.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the guys he meets up with, he later finds, I think one was 18 years old and the other was 17.
Oh
These
my
coyotes.
gosh.
And they're like, we're not even the youngest people doing it. Like there's 13 and 14-year-olds doing it. But I just was like, I was kind of locked in, nervous for him basically going to Mexico. And all of a sudden they passed 2 people getting married. They're like, wait, what's going on? These people get married on the bridge so that they could become citizens.
Oh my gosh. This is such a joke. And he
Oh
pays
my
$1
gosh.
and there's no
$1.
ID check to get into. I'm like, what? And meanwhile, I'm like all worried about getting
That
my
was to get
kid's
into
passport so
Mexico.
we can
That
go
was
into
getting into
Canada.
Mexico.
Like, oh
The-
my gosh. It's
Well,
ridiculous.
you can get into the US for free, theoretically.
Yeah, seriously.
Right.
I was
but
gonna
yeah,
save
this-
myself $100.
It's interesting that he was focusing on Eagle Pass because it isn't Eagle Pass actually previous to all of this wasn't very well known. I think it was in No Country for Old Men was where it
Mhm,
may have become famous. But other than that, kind of a small city, not really much going on. And it kind of became when they started putting in more border impediments at bigger cities, this became kind of the highlight spot for coyotes to get people over. And they were talking about
Right.
they're making, I think it's like $3,000-$4,000 a person to just get them over the border. But then
Right.
after that, they have another package that's like $5,000 to get people into Austin. But it was actually really hard to watch the video in some points because they were talking about how many children die in the Rio Grande because
Yeah.
most people coming from like third world countries, they don't know how to swim. Like we take for granted in America that we all know how to swim. Most countries actually don't know how to swim, populations from there. So they'll get taken away by undercurrents and the coyotes just watch them go down. And they said
And a
another-
river is definitely different than just being on a beach. You
Oh,
know.
totally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they were saying another underappreciated underappreciated part about the Border Patrol is that they actually save so many lives. So not only are they trying to keep people out, but they're just trying to, like, if they see someone floating away, they'll pick them up. Like there's a lot of video footage of them saving their lives, risking their own lives to save people from drowning.
Yeah.
I think it might be just a good full circle after watching that video, after our conversation of like, we have our politicians that we elected for solutions, grandstanding and blaming each other and not getting anything done. Well, the current system, the easiest and most incentivized way to become an American is to have to cross this Rio Grande River where kids and women, adults
All
are
time.
drowning.
Right.
And they make you feel guilty when, in fact, Biden's open border policies are creating that magnet, that horrible incentive to risk life and limb thousands of miles and crossing a dangerous river. And they make you feel guilty as a Christian, saying, this doesn't seem like a sensible way to have our immigration laws. We actually have a very generous law that allows 1 million people come into this country perfectly legally every year. So we should have a border that's closed and only let people in who we want to. And they make you feel guilty. They say, they throw the Bible in our face and say, oh, aren't you going to welcome the stranger?
So,
and in fact, they're the ones who have dead bodies on their hands, blood on their hands.
If I may, because I think we've nailed that point. We usually end it around here, but we just got in a comment. We were going to talk about it. I guess it didn't fit in the flow of the conversation. But Jan, you said this, and I don't want you to feel bad for this, but I've had a lot of other people say this, and we really take issue with this statement. The statement being, I don't want to vote because I'm not sure it will really count or it'll be fair. We've heard many people for many reasons say that they're not going to vote. Josh, if you wanted to speak to that really quick, what would you say to people that are maybe feeling like, I don't know, on voting this election cycle?
That Joe Biden wants conservatives to think like this. He is begging, praying that a lot of conservatives will not vote because they think it's unfair. Are there people, are there malicious bad actors who are stuffing the ballot box in certain places? Absolutely. But does that mean we just roll over and just say, let them take over our country? No, we fight. We fight in the courts. We fight in the ballot box. And yes, I'm going to show up and make sure I get my vote counted no matter what. And then we still got to fight for it. Part of the reason why we had more votes that were bad in 2020 was because we didn't have all these requirements, and voting by mail creates a horrible system of fraud. We need to vote early in person, get that vote to count. And yes, we need to win by enough of a margin that they can't steal it.
Yeah. And if I could just piggyback on that, this is a question I really struggled with this, especially in the 2016 election. I was really feeling like I just can't vote for Trump, and I obviously can't vote for Hillary. So what do I do? I did end up voting, but I think it's something that I've learned a lot about since coming to work at Catholic Vote is the importance of the whole ballot. So you're not just walking in somewhere or sending in a ballot with Trump v. Biden, but there's a whole score of people running for different offices below them, all the way down to the local level. And to say, well, I'm just going to sit this one out and not bother. It's also giving up on the whole of our government and your voice in it. And I would just encourage you to show up and vote your conscience, and be informed about it, have an informed conscience, but show up and participate. Because again, like Josh said, they want you to give up and say, oh, it's a done deal, it's rigged, they're just going to win. So 100%. Oh yeah. And Amy Smith, volunteer at your ballot booth. Yes, go for it. So yeah. I've been there. I felt that way, but don't let it stop you from participating in person in our elections.
Yes, and Miguel. Sorry, this is throwing everyone off, but what Mexico is not doing.
Yes, Miguel.
In this video as well. Sorry, this is just it's crazy that this guy went on this trip, but he was talking to cartels, or sorry, not the cartels. He was talking to these coyotes, and he was basically saying the hardest part for migrants to get past is Mexico, because once they get there, they always get shaken down by the federales. It's extremely corrupt. They're exacerbating the problem, no doubt. Josh, typing right now, I can hear you.
Called out.
Don't let the comments get you down. Good comment, Josh. But yes, Mexico's a huge problem in this equation. A lot of the cartels are actually more powerful than the Mexican government right now, which is, of course, another problem. So yes, I saw that point. I was like, yes, in this video, it addresses that. I'd recommend go checking out. They did have a weird section about it's actually not a Catholic saint, but many people in Mexico worship. I think he's actually considered a demon by the Catholic Church, but it's like the Saint of Death. I don't know if you've heard of it. There's a weird movement in Mexico.
Santa Muerta.
Yeah. And they did have a section on that. So that was a little bit interesting, but it is real. People are.
It's a corruption of Our Lady of Guadalupe. They make Our Lady of Guadalupe look like the death holding.
They put the skull face, the Dia del Muerte. They put it.
Yeah,
on the face.
Dia del Muerte. Yeah. That was what was going
on. The Detroit Tigers slugger Miguel Cabrera was unfortunately a devotee. So
interesting. Huh.
Saint Michael, pray for us. Add in Saint Michael to our litany there, Pogo.
Yeah. But anyway, tons of fun. If you'd like to join us next time, noon Eastern time, come hang out. We appreciate all you. You can fight Josh in the comment section. That's a lot of fun. So anyway, we enjoy you guys so much. Saint Fidelis, Saint Thomas More, and Our Lady of Guadalupe, pray for us. And we will see you on the next one. Peace.